Here we are once again. Should I say here I am once again, ready to take a podcast. But you know what? I don't have any Dairy Queen.
It's a bit early.
The sun's still up. There's actually light in our room, the podcast studio, and I don't have Dairy Queen. These are not ideal podcast. What's the word, dude? I'm all messed up. These are not ideal podcast conditions. Thank you. But I'll go ahead and take it for you.
What do you have to say?
Besides not having Dairy Queen, I'm waiting for that check to roll in from the podcast before I go. Comes in. I don't know if you get your check or not, but I get mine.
I didn't know there was any checks involved.
Well, I just have them send me Dairy Queen gift cards. A couple cents at a time. And then I save them up, and then I go crazy with a medium Oreo milkshake. That's my go-to order for everyone listening that feels like bringing a medium Oreo milkshake to the next King show. I'll guest list you.
Jesus. You're one of those guys. Those are what we call band dudes.
We're pretty familiar with band dudes because anytime we tour, unless we're headlining and no one is with us, we're with band dudes. Which, they're all right people, some of them. But they are definitely band dudes. You should start doing that. What would you guest list somebody if they brought?
Girls.
Ass. Bring it.
I wouldn't have to be that lewd about it. I said my answer and then you changed it right after I said it.
Maybe that was my answer.
Well, you asked me the question.
You're right. You're right.
Wouldn't really trust anything else that would come crawling through those doors at a King show, especially
on October 30th in Hamtramck, Michigan. Get your tickets now. King 810 Live.
You're one of those, smash that.
Smash that MF and subscribe and donate button. Do you, what was I going to say? Do you remember when bands used to do, live studio vlog updates? I know.
Oh, studio update?
Or, it would be, them talking to their MacBook camera, what's up, guys? We're fucking Angels Falling and fucking... we're in the studio with fucking Joey Sturgis.
No. I don't... try not to pay attention, I guess.
Well, that was a thing that bands used to do.
I feel like certain tier.
Yeah. They definitely weren't good bands.
Not that it matters, because I also think we have the 2020...
right.
Vision,
It was
but I
just
think
a
at
matter
the
of the time
people
period,
probably,
right? Everyone had access to a video camera all of a sudden, and it became fun to do.
I would just say that it's still like that. It just comes in more micro pieces of content.
Like on Instagram stories or something?
Pictures of people's food.
Oh, yeah. I don't ever get that.
That's even worse than a studio update, right? The content is even lacking, even more so than that worthless thing that no one wants to know about, and they still do it, and maybe even do it more,
You know what I think's freaky? And a lot of people, when I said this, they got upset at me. I know you're not really on social media, so you might not even know this is a thing, but people make social media pages for their pets. And it's like your pet either there has to be something super exceptional. I guess I understand, did you ever see Grumpy Cat? That was a huge meme that...
Only because Beale used to have the shirt.
Right. But the fact that there's even a shirt. But other than... people will make one for their animal, and it's you just have a cat or a dog. There's nothing exceptional. So you must just be so delusional that you think your animal, which is one of billions of this exact same thing on the planet, Which I guess that applies to people too. Everyone thinks that they're interesting as an individual, but
Yeah, the thing when you're telling me about this, the thought that comes to mind, well, first, the cat, the animal social media, for example. Us sitting here talking about it comes from a post hoc understanding that we know of Grumpy Cat because maybe he was viral.
yeah,
But when I try to think about things, you have to like remove the dissonance. So you have to remove that post hoc it's like knowing the end of the movie, and you kind of just remove time. And the fact is, no one knew they created Grumpy Cat until it was called Grumpy Cat. So I don't let them people off the hook. There is not an excuse for those people because their cat was the one that went viral.
Right.
Because they were still doing what it is we find
delusional. Yeah, no.
Depending on the reason, they're still doing it before that. Because it has to exist before it becomes that. So, and I don't care about that at all. But one annoying, one more recently, the thought that I was thinking is video games.
People that Twitch stream or
No, the idea now that video games are completely excusable because you can find 4 13-year-olds that made $1 million playing them.
like you're saying how the Z-Dog said to me, or did you pay attention to that conversation or no?
No.
I was watching a Mortal Kombat tournament on my phone. We were just sitting around talking, and he's like, "What a fucking loser sitting here watching people play video games." And my counter was, "These people are about to make more money at this tournament than either you or I will make in our whole lives."
But then my counter would be, you're watching.
But why does that matter? That's my thing is always, why do you care what someone else is doing with their free time?
I don't. I don't
Right.
care.
But because millions of people watch the NFL every year.
I think those are losers too.
Right. I mean, I can't make that counter to you or Z because neither of you watch professional sports. But
Well, mostly because it's a big fat slob sitting in the stand drinking beer talking about we. And that's another pet peeve of mine. You aren't on the team. You don't own any stake in it.
right.
Your heart rate doesn't even go above 50 BPMs.
That's probably not true. They're probably super fucking into it.
Through athletic physical activities.
That's just.
But the idea about the video games is well, it's situational. So the breakdown for it would not be like anything. No one should play, or no one should like them, or no one should. It's not just a black or white thing. My point is, no one that I've heard say that has done jack fuck. So it would be like me saying, I played rugby yesterday. If I went to the All Blacks, the All Blacks make X amount of dollars a year. But I'm not going to the All Blacks. So why are you telling me about the greatest possible potential of something that you're not even a shell of?
I guess.
Especially when it's a 30-year-old man talking about a 14-year-old. Well, it's like, well, I guess that's even more reason why you should just throw in the towel, because if you ain't made it by now.
Why do you think? Do you separate video games spectating from sports spectating, or is it kind of in the same field?
No, but I do think they're different.
Right. I mean, obviously, one's a physical competition, the other's a video game, but.
I just don't like. I don't like when we talk about it. We've already thrown in a bunch of things that don't matter, and it's starting to get slippery now. But what I mean is the defense that
someone else is making money doing it,
and they once weren't, is not a reason for anything. And I really mean anything. I don't mean anything I mean anything as far as you watching it or doing it or whatever.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Because
that's why
it
I'm
doesn't
not
have anything to do with my life.
right.
Or anyone around me. It doesn't have any effect on anything. And I also don't care because I just don't care about video games.
It's really not an argument to be had because you're not.
No, it's not really a debate.
But like the Z-Dog, I would debate because he goes out of his way to attack what someone's
I think
doing.
he's just being a friendly. Right. It's his way of being friendly, although it's not very friendly. But
no, I
it's
get it.
A bit endearing. But my biggest problem is when the 30-year-old man is sitting there talking about all the millions that these teenagers are making, and it's just like, I'm glad for the teenagers and I'm sad for the man. It's in the same way that sports.
Right.
I'm glad for the athletes, and in the same way in music, like I think we talked about it in the past, where being on the poor person's team, being a degenerate, reprobate, vagrant, grifter, disenfranchised loser, I like when other losers become millionaires off of stupid white people that buy their albums. Like, good for our team.
Right.
But I don't appreciate all the stupid white people that buy the albums. So when I see a kid making a living playing video games, like, good for him, but it doesn't mean good for anyone in the universe that has one thing in common with him, which is I play games.
Going around and waving the flag that, like, they're watching it because... I guess because you can watch it and enjoy it, and I don't have a problem with anybody enjoying anything that they want to enjoy, obviously within reason.
No.
But
that's perfectly fine.
When you're waving the flag...
But when you start to say
it's
that...
It's like a posturing type thing.
It's like, wait a minute. Because I can do that about anything. If we sit here and talk and someone says, why are you guys talking? And we say, well, Joe Rogan tends to, do okay doing it.
We're coming for that ass, Joe. Watch the throne, because next thing you know,
Jesus Christ.
Be on top
but
of
the point is,
world.
It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You can point to anyone who just won, but it's pretty stupid.
Do you think that there exists any, like, environment or anything like that for just... I guess your problem isn't with the
you
person
have to separate
it,
right? So the answer would be no if you acknowledge the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
But if you're not talking about the peanut gallery, it's perfectly fine. Plenty of people make video games. They're really interesting. I'm not even a anti-video game dude. I don't really like them. Don't really play them, but some of them.
What's your favorite game of all time? Video
game. I think Metal Slug.
Okay. Side-scrolling, fucking banging guns.
Not a fighter.
No.
Not a fighter. Yeah, Metal Slug.
Because I just think about, sports or athletic or any sort of entertainment like that as entertainment goes back centuries to gladiators and things like that.
Yeah, the video game interfacing really blows my mind. Don't get me wrong. It's not, the idea that it exists is really crazy. I'm not discrediting it or people or especially competitors, because cool, but when you pull that analogy out of thin air, it's kind of wrong. It doesn't mean anything, I guess. And most people do. So, like I said, I only know a couple people that competitively game. My cousin actually competitively gamed. I don't know if he does anymore, but he used to play for MLG.
What, like Halo?
I believe Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
Yeah. I don't really know anything about it or care. I never even asked him. But to me, it's almost like even worse admitting it, because you're talking about what everyone else can do, but you can't even do anything. So the idea coming from, okay, so your perspective maybe, right? You're watching the game
Sure.
and you also play games.
Yeah.
So are you just a bona fide failure because you haven't ever made any money, or have you not made money playing games? Or
No, I don't. No, I've never made any money playing games. But I would say I'm not any more of a loser than someone that enjoys watching football and also enjoys going around and throwing the football.
right? But I would just say, do we switch that over when you talk about the accomplishments of game? You know what I mean? Of these gamers, you know what I mean? Do you switch modes?
I feel like people, because that argument definitely comes up more. You never hear someone say, "Oh, well, football players are making millions of dollars. It's all right for me to watch it." And I think that's because video games still have this stigma from people, where it's like, "Oh, if you play games, you're a loser, but if you play sports, it's cool." And I think people pull that money card out because it's like, what's the coolest thing you can have? Money. And it's not saying like
It could
I
be
could
because of
do it.
age, though, as well. It could be because the video game is obviously newer
Yeah.
than the, what would that be? Football,
Football,
or the
any
American
sport.
American sport, I'll just say.
But I think that people pull that card because it's just like it's trying like a trump card in a way.
It still
Prove
has a
to
stigma.
somebody.
Yeah, well, and of course it would, right? It would have the stigma because these $1 million contests and doing whatever, they weren't around probably in the 90s, right?
No.
It wasn't like that.
There was
some
still a little bit of
computer-
money in some of like the early like Unreal
Yeah.
Tournament and stuff.
But it wasn't, they weren't filling, rugby stadiums in
Yeah.
Japan or whatever.
Isn't
it
that
might be.
crazy? Selling
Yeah.
out Mandalay Bay in Vegas.
But that's
and-
pretty new, right?
Yeah, within
so
the last
a few years.
10 years probably.
That's probably why. Maybe in 10 more, it will be donned as, it will be at least honorary or formidable or whatever people may.
Did you know that the Army has like they have a college football team? They have a gaming team.
Really?
You can play games for Army. My uncle was telling me. You travel around. It's just like how the Army football team does. They go to West Point and study Army stuff in school, but instead of going to play football, they go to game. Isn't that crazy?
So all of the really liberal, really democratic people that have a problem with our military budget, just know your kids are spending part of the budget on video cards and high-speed gaming training.
Right.
So you should be
That's
okay
cool.
with a little bit of the budget because the computers are looking real good on the Army gaming team.
But I mean, hey, if you want to make that argument, football equipment's expensive too.
Yeah. Have you seen the military budget?
Not personally. Never been
But
to Fort Knox.
I don't really. It's hard, and I think when we talk about things, and maybe that's why we started talking about things, it sounds like splitting hairs, but it's really not. I think people have their point of views because of their lack of awareness and not intellect or intelligence. Like it's not because you know about something. It's awareness. And I think people have their opinions because of the unawareness, not because of their lack of knowledge or IQ or anything. I think
That kind of probably applies to most things that general people talk about.
Yeah. So when you say the video game at first, you kind of get a knee jerk, but it's like, well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about success? Are you defending the idea of not being a societal loser? Are you talking about money? Because when you say they make a good salary, it's like a lot of things do.
It's like someone sitting around playing Operation saying that surgeons make a lot of money.
It's
to an extent.
I just have a real I really don't like to split hairs, but it's two different things. What we were talking about, and especially talking about the financials. I don't like it. I guess it's like when people say, I have a couple of examples. Wine is good for you, and you say, not really.
Whenever I see stuff like that in the news or whatever, oh, coffee, dude, it's like every other time, every other day or whatever, I see one that's like coffee, healthy for you, and then coffee causes cancer, or like pizza's
Right.
healthy for you, or pizza leads to whatever, obesity.
Shocking new discoveries about ice cream diet.
Yeah, for just as many things as I see for anything that says it's positive, obviously other than, some stuff, fruits and vegetables are seen generally positive, but there's a negative article out about it. So whenever I just disregard it all, and I just eat whatever I want to eat, and I'll probably be dead soon anyways. So.
Because that's Dairy Queen, as you already noted.
Dairy Queen once a week.
Yeah, that's part of the splitting hairs thing I was kind of getting at, where what I think a lot of people do and not being aware is, well, what I think people do with that is they decide a narrative and then they find evidence that supports it. The problem with that is you can find evidence for anything. And I think we've talked about that before on here. I could find evidence that the sky is green, and you would have to tell me I was telling the truth, because I could show you a picture of the northern lights. Doesn't really mean anything though. So when I talk about the awareness, knowing I always think about telling a kid Santa Claus isn't real, and when it learns that it's not real, he doesn't know that he's not real yet. He's not aware of it. You just told him it was. And he could memorize those pieces of explicit information, but the awareness that a man can't go into 7 billion people's roofs is an understanding. Not that he's real or not, but that it's not possible. And having these pieces of information that support whatever narrative you have, it doesn't really mean anything. And I feel like I've said that like 3 times in 5 minutes. But I don't know how else to put it, that it is it's a few cognitive dissonances and a few biases as well. But whenever I'm trying to think about something, and I'm not really a good example because who cares, but you kind of got to get out of the narratives, I guess, especially the common ones, but even the uncommon ones, because I always like, for example, I always like gangster rap, and that's the shit that I listen to. And a bunch of people have made a good living touting that they were anti-gangster rap, or they were conscious, or they were socially woke. And
you're talking
like
about other
that.
rappers?
I'm just talking about period in general. And they don't realize that they're just talking about the second biggest genre of rap. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that's just the other side.
Right.
It's not any better or worse, but they kind of tout it like it is superior. They're not admitting that they're just playing into the second largest demographic in hip hop.
It probably just has to do with the idea that a lot of people that really don't listen to rap have of like, rap's all bitches and money. You always hear like corny white people say that that's what rap music's about.
Yeah.
And they think that every rap song is a gangster rap song. So when someone like Chance the Rapper comes out, he's touted as he's on Ellen and Good Morning America.
Yeah.
Did you see that performance? Yeah, Good Morning America. He brought out DaBaby because DaBaby's on one of the new songs that he has.
Really?
His whole verse was like censored. It's like, this is cool.
Yeah, it's just weird. When I see that stuff, it's just like, It's fine. It's just another finesse for the poor team, like winning kind of thing, you know? It's good. But I don't like when they flip and then talk about like integrity and things like that when your actions don't really reflect that, you know?
It's like the black metal thing we were talking about earlier, and let me clarify something. Me and David, we're not sitting around talking about black metal.
We have a friend who is, though.
And
always. And
you'll see him at Devil's Night.
maybe we'll have to talk about it another time. But yeah, my point was, a lot of times when there's back and forths on things, aside from people just talking past each other or whatever, there's a lot of variation, and it kind of doesn't really get to the point, I guess.
The idea that these black metal artists were saying that they're all anti-industry or anti-capitalism, but then they were selling albums.
Yeah, everything they do.
Right.
But I think it's the same way for
isn't
any really harsh movements like veganism. It's like, well, you have a pair of shoes on, so that's going to be a problem.
Do you think it's crazy when a vegan person owns a pet?
I have a lot of crazy thoughts about it. Yeah, and the first thing that they say when you say that is their shelter rescue animals, and then you say you don't say anything because we're not going to talk about it. But some kid just said something because we had just did the Hemingway video, and he said something to me like, classic song, shitty video. And it's like, I said, close your eyes.
Dude, that guy's dumb. He's just salty. That video rules.
That video is so dope. It's never been done before.
It's very true.
So when that guy does something that's never been done, I'll actually hang out with him if he wants. Because I want to see it. What the hell he comes up with. Because, being vegan, that's not really that interesting to me. Everyone in the world is.
You were vegan for a while, right? Or vegetarian?
Yeah, probably longer than that guy. I don't sit and talk about things that I haven't actually tried. I've probably been vegan and vegetarian longer than anyone who wants to argue with me about it.
You're 50 years old.
Exactly. But
so if someone's grandpa wants to argue about veganism.
Yeah. I was arguing with someone, not really an argument, but I was listening to someone talk, I guess, and they were sharing their views, and then I reminded them that I had actually been that for longer than them, 3 times as long, and they would have to contact me in 6 more years if they wanted to still have the same debate. And I'm betting they won't, but veganism, much like black metal, is something that I am immediately turned off to talk about, so we have to keep that moving. But the Hemingway video, that was pretty dope. That's a real classic.
You know what's crazy? Because we spent 2 episodes of this podcast talking about going to Spain and running with the bulls, but regardless of your feelings about the bull run, whether you don't care, you're for it or against it, whatever, you can't. I guarantee anyone listening to this podcast doesn't know anyone that knows anyone that knows anyone that's ran with the bulls, unless you're from Spain.
Not a lot of people do it, yeah, especially here, right?
So it's like...
Isn't it strange, though? And this is a side shoot so we can get out of it. Well, first off, it's a classic, but second off, the beats knocks like a real fucking...
Hell made this
exactly.
beat, baby. Dude,
and
he's
also,
the GOAT.
And also, those glasses I was wearing was a camera. That was not my stylistic choice. Side note.
Yeah.
Someone said, these glasses, da-da-da-da. But I thought the split screen shot at the beginning of the video basically outlined that idea, that I put a camera on.
Eisensteinian editing.
Eisensteinian editing. And That's the mise en scène.
Our music videos are so next level. Our whole get down is so next level.
So anyway, let me kind of spin out of it. What were we just talking about?
The glasses aren't your style.
That wasn't my style. Well, none of it really was my style, but
Right, the white shirt with the white pant. We had a friend meet us there. And
Yeah.
he was like, wait a second.
You guys are gonna do this?
We're really going to wear this?
It's like we're not really that cool. And when you can put on such a, I don't want to call it bozo, because that's their shit. When you can put on something so opposite, it couldn't be more opposite of what we
Right.
would normally wear. I mean, if you look at us right now, it seems to be a good thing.
Yeah.
If you're at least that open to, if it doesn't matter what you're open to or what your beliefs are. If you can take the clothes you wear off and put on that and then to walk around out in the street, that alone is a cultural but also a real personal accomplishment, because it's something strange, and in a very small way, eating food you don't like is the same way, or
Sure.
trying things. And that was basically what the spin-off was about. The segue was, it's strange that I don't do any type of online dating, obviously, because I'm not 50 like everyone says I am, but or 15, because that seems like basically the bracket. It seems like
15 to 50?
15 or 50.
Oh.
The in between seem to be confused, but my point is, when you read, everyone's 6 sentences that they sum their whole life up in, which is sad because they actually can sum their
Right.
life up in 6 sentences, usually 6 words.
People be like,
Dog mom.
bartender, dog mom.
It's like, wow, that's who you are? How pitiful.
I love The Office.
Yeah. Or they'll say their kid's mom. And it's like...
Oh, yeah. Well, that applies
Or dad.
beyond dating profiles, too.
Yeah, but I'm getting to the point, but let me just do a sidebar here where if that is who you are, you're sad.
I don't want to side by your sidebar, but I feel like a lot of people, obviously this doesn't apply to anyone because accidents happen, or some people actually want to have kids, but I feel like a lot of people that have kids at a young age do it because they see no future for themselves, so they're like, I'll just throw in the towel and give it a go with a kid, and then maybe my kid will end up being something.
I think it's a really crazy, out of this world thing to have one. I don't have one, obviously, and everyone will just say that he just says this because he
Allegedly.
doesn't have one. Right, but my point is, no one is praising you for doing something fucking dogs do. Anyone can fuck and procreate.
You said that
Absolutely
last week.
anyone in the world. So you get no cred. Sorry. Anyway, that is not the point either. The point is, when you have these 6-word summary bios that everyone carries and just can't wait to update and change, with each year and each resolution, which I feel like is a whole separate conversation. They tend to put cultured or well-traveled and things like this. And what is what we are talking about if not cultured?
Yeah.
What is that? You know what I mean?
Well, let's look at it
aside
wrong
from
because
being,
it doesn't line up with these people's personal beliefs, but how can you be cultured or well-traveled if you're only looking at things that match up with your personal beliefs?
your personal and your cultural thing, right?
Yeah,
Because I feel like sometimes people look at us and might have some things to say about me and things like this, and it's like, I'm not one of you. Like, I had met a racist King fan once, and he was white, and obviously I'm white. I mean, Gene's black, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, why do you think I'm one of you?
Right. Because you're white.
If something pops off, you're the first to go. I mean, actually, on this last tour, there was a guy that, had a knife. Did we talk about this in the past, too?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, he was trying to start some stuff, and I was really hoping that went down, because something,
You want me to frame it up so everybody knows what was really going down?
I guess.
He was standing by the stage during the show, saying a bunch of dumb stuff. He's probably intoxicated, but because he screamed "Play Fatter on the Heart" after we had already played it, and then I guess prior in the night he had made a comment about Mexican people to one of the people in our crew who is Mexican, and then
About killing Mexicans, right?
about killing Mexicans specifically, yeah.
On a certain day, which it wasn't, so he was lucky. Something like that.
And then during the show, he said something. Was it about white power or something that he had?
It was something like that, but it was nothing that I really know. And here's a disclaimer to people like him. I definitely hope that you have these ideas, these confrontational ideas, and I definitely want you to bring them to the shows, and I definitely want you to voice them. But when we're on stage, we have in-ear monitors in, which are earplugs times 5. If I'm standing in front of you, I can't hear you. Anything you say, I can't hear you. If you're saying something in the front row, if you're right in front of me moving your mouth, I can't hear you. So if you're looking for something, wait until we don't have them in our ears before or after the show, and you will gladly be met with whatever is necessary. But the point is, he had all these ideas, and he thought that what I was consistent with him. Well, anyway, he had came outside after his racial thing, and kind of like squealed off in his car before anyone could get a hold of him.
Which is funny.
Yeah, he took off running, mind you, and I think he was sitting with his bitch and one of his friends in a 3-seat pickup, so they were all packed in there, similar to Mexicans if you were making a racy joke, which was also a bit funny. And they squealed off in a pickup, of course, and that was also funny too. And he kind of came back down, train tracks down the way, and he announced that it was him. He was probably about 30 meters away, and there were some fans and there were some people around, and I was just thinking, I hope this guy gets close enough to grab a hold of him. You know what I mean? He had a knife. He had flicked a knife open, and he was, I would say probably more than 30 meters away. Wouldn't you? It was at least 25 yards.
I wasn't there, so I was busy slinging these shirts, boy.
Okay.
2 for 30.
So I was hoping that he came close so I could appear in the news for something that was actually good. But
for once.
that's pretty much besides the point. This was kind of the sub bar, but the point that we were talking about was what I was getting to in the segue from Hemingway was that exposure and those types of things. To me, this is what I found important to talk about. So far in this thing, we haven't really found anything that was that important, in my opinion. But if someone gets something important out of this hour, I would get this point, and it would be that type of self-actualization and that type of exposure would be, should be as high on the list as you can possibly get it. And I think it only comes through experience. You can't get it intellectually. You can't get it explicitly. And I always have this kind of, it's a kind of a thought experiment, I guess, where I have a belief that no one is actually racist. There is just degrees of ignorance.
Yeah.
And we may have talked about this before as well, but if someone is raised racist and they're really racist, but you give them, say, a Jewish friend in school or a Mexican friend in school, they kind of have like one gradient, a degree of apprehension towards absolute racism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that I think most people are socially racist, I think it's a show. I think a lot of times, but
Because it's just the environment that they grow up in, and it's...
Yeah, and then because it's funny, it's really stupid when people say this, but they say things like, "Yeah, I'm not racist. I have a black friends," but everyone knows that doesn't matter. But what I do believe matters is that type of exposure, and I think it comes from an empathy, like an understanding kind of perspective.
Yeah.
Where the more you're exposed to it, that's why I don't think these old ass men who were around when slaves were around are actually racist. They are just old ass men who were around when slaves were around, and they may act racially. You know what I mean? They may have discrimination, but I think they have discriminations against a bunch of other things as well, for whatever reasons, and their reasons aren't right, but it comes from non-exposure. And I have another example, and that's prison, and that's on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's overexposure. So it's lines drawn everywhere, and these people hang out with these people, and these people hang out with these people, and you can't hang with these people if you're these people. And that's the opposite of that idea of just the ignorance. And my point is, I'm just using racism because it's something people understand. It doesn't make sense to me at all, and I actually don't believe in it, but the idea is you can put cultured into the same kind of, run it through the same kind of experiment, and it's the same way. I think the same thing comes out, that the narratives on both sides are laden with errors, even ones that are supportive and thought it to be progressive and liberal. I think they're full of errors, and I think same with the conservative ideas. You know, I don't think that one of them's right, and I think the point was I was just using that for an example, but you could use the same thing with culture. You can take it and throw it in there.
I have a sidebar question about something you brought up. Because about your time in your personal perspective, because you've been to prison.
Not prison.
Jail. Is jail the same way as far as the...
No.
Okay.
It's not.
And then I guess a follow-up, because I guess you don't have first-hand experience with it, but you said it's the opposite of it, where these lines are drawn because of overexposure. Why do you think that happens?
I don't think it's overexposure. I just meant you get overexposed to the juxtaposition of like the harshest of contrasts.
Okay. Because there are some really racist-ass dudes in there, right?
Yeah.
And is that why? Because it's like, well, we should stick together because
the
we know
thing about
that...
it is, I don't want to say there's really racist-ass dudes, because most of the groups are. That's the big misunderstanding. The say the Aryan Brotherhood or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
They're no more racist than the Muslims. It's strange to me, because when you think of racism, you think of that.
You think
that's
of
white guy
a white
who's
person.
right, exactly. You really aren't at any degree to call anything else into question. You know what I mean? Which is really confusing to me because there's racism everywhere. And even now, like, we think this country's racial. This country is nothing compared to Israel. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have holy wars.
Isn't that crazy?
We can't even understand what
Right.
a holy war is. So the ideas are really weird. It's just like anything else, I guess. There's a bunch of ones. Maybe race is a bad one, but I really don't. I really get confused on the idea of race because people tend to only want to go back as far as their narrative goes. Like, whatever fits what they're, I guess, trying to do. You know, they don't want to go all the way back. You don't want to keep going back. So if you say the white woman is culturally appropriating Hispanic women by wearing hoop earrings, you're refusing to go back to Egypt. You're only going back to Hispanic, and you're only going back to a post-Spanish conquistador conquest of conquering
Right.
of Hispanic, of Mexico and South America. You're only
I feel
going
like
to
a
that.
lot of people, I mean, I'm sure that the people in Mexico and South America think about it, but I feel like a lot of people in America don't think about that fact.
I don't think a lot of people in Mexico
No,
think about it.
You don't?
No. There's a good quote, and it's actually in a King song I was thinking about putting on this last album. The Suicide King probably released it as a single now that I'm talking about it, but yeah, and there's a quote and an idea that is, you know, the lyric is, if there's no war, man will create a war in peacetime. And it comes from the idea that there's a quote, and I'm going to misquote it, and it's not going to be accurate, but in the most comfortable of times, in the freest of times, or something to that nature, even the slightest misfortunes seem like oppressions.
Okay.
So I think we're just so comfortable as a people. I mean, when you're arguing about the things that we argue about as a society, you have to be so comfortable
Really just living
that
it
you're
up.
pitiful. Right. And people just aren't able to see that. If you go to, you know, the idea that Abraham Maslow has, which is the self-actualization idea,
Pyramid.
which I have always, and it's like the growth of an individual toward the fulfillment of its highest needs. That's self-actualization. The first one
Just basic.
is
Shelter, food, water.
food, sleep, air.
Okay.
So everyone needs that, and there's no conversation yet. Then safety, needs for security or protection, you know what I mean? And that could be like caveman status, right?
A cave.
But then there's a comma. Especially those that emerge from social or political instability.
So
That
like,
didn't used to be a thing, but that's in there because,
right. That wasn't in there when I learned about it, and that wasn't that long ago.
damn.
I don't think it was.
And then the third, belonging and love, including the needs of deficiency and selfish taking instead of giving, belonging. And unselfish love, which people don't understand that to be, based upon growth rather than deficiency. So not I need you kind of thing.
Right.
So we've said 3 needs and still have not got to anything that we're talking about or that we have talked about. Number 4, needs for self-esteem, self-respect, and healthy, positive feelings derived from admiration. We still haven't talked about anything, right? When you talk about, this is what made me think when you had asked me the question before we started, and some chick had asked the top 5 books for life. I was just going to say, fuck the 5 books. I have 5 sentences for you. Maslow's self-actualization. And that was the 4th one. To the 5th one, and we finally get somewhere as far as somewhere outward beyond, oneself inward, is being. It needs concerning creative self-growth engendered from fulfillment of potential and meaning in life. I feel like the other things are not actions, as far as I feel like you got to get those right before you can. I guess the best way to put it is, I feel like most people I know don't have 1, 2, and 3, and 4 checked off and are searching for 5.
Right.
And you're thinking,
they're trying to skip steps.
Yeah, but it's not a step to me. It's like, those are all prerequisites. You have to have them in place because they're just as important. And they overlook those, thinking they're going to get to that. And so, fuck the 5 books. I'll give you these 5 sentences. They're not even mine. Those are what you need to be thinking about. And we can also go, I can talk for 12 hours about Maslow's self-actualization. But the point is, what we were just talking about before this, what were we saying?
We were talking about...
I was talking about just people's narrative, I guess.
Yeah, how in times of comfort or whatever, the minor...
Even, yeah. So, yeah, that was basically bringing that to kind of enforce the idea that these conversations, to me, are only being had in westernized countries. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is a lot of signaling to me. Not that I disagree with it. But like I said, there are a lot of ideas that, to me, don't make sense. Like, I feel like people's narrative of oppression, they conveniently rewind to the spot that backs up their narrative.
Right.
I could make scientific claims and only rewind it 40 years and blow your mind. I could make scientific claims if I wanted to position myself as someone in 1915 and only rewind it to there, you know what I mean? I can make all these ideas and just not acknowledge the overarching idea and just stay on the narrative, I guess, the beaten path, basically. And it doesn't make any sense. It's not right. If your point doesn't mean anything, if you rewind 100 years, it's not a good point. So, yeah, I don't think about things like, that was basically saying, with racism and appropriation and these types of things. And it's so weird to me because when you say cultured, what does that mean? It means you appropriated a bunch of things, right? More than your own.
Right.
And that is in your 5-word bio.
Isn't it funny
when
that
all it really means is...
appropriation has such a negative connotation?
And to me, society picks off words like a sniper. You know what I mean?
Right.
The fucking word is now negative. You just wonder, what word are they going after next? You know what I mean? A term I really hate is usually noun shaming.
Like
whatever it may
slut
be.
shaming, I think, is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah. Or body shaming.
Okay, fat shaming or
And that just goes back to these conversations where you know you're doing good as a people when you're getting ridiculed for making fun of a chick who weighs 450 pounds because a few people in your society think she's a supermodel. I don't care if she is one, and I don't care about anything. But my point is, that is a sign of affluence, decadence, opulence.
Right.
You know what I mean? These are, in no way are any of these things, as far as if you're saying, as a kingdom, and I'm using a biology, kingdom, phylum, class,
Okay,
order,
yeah,
family,
yeah.
genus, species. The foundation of this thing is in no way negative. And yeah, I don't think anyone has a real say, because you can't, we don't know. First off, we don't know how the earth is. So if you're going to say someone is taking someone's culture, you have to go to the first culture that did it.
And see
Well,
where
let me just stop you there. We don't know.
right.
We've only been back as far as what, Sumerian, or maybe more. 6, 8, 10, 12,000 years. We know people were before that. So, and it's the same with any other story that we're telling, whether it's true or not, whether you agree with or don't agree with, whatever it is you're doing. You can't just rewind it back to the part you like, stop it, and then be like, look, I'm right. And that's it comes back to, I was talking about Hemingway, it comes back to, what people and how exactly people are. But my point is, it's funny when I see cultured, because I feel like the wall's about to flip, and it's going to be like a library book that flips into a secret passage where, you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense.
Well,
Does that make any sense?
yeah, it does make sense. People call themselves an adventurer, and it's like, bitch, you went out to the bar and got drunk on a Tuesday. You're not an adventurer.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to the video game conversation too. When they talk about, I'm a free spirit, or it's just like, you're not really.
Right.
You don't even have a passport. You can't really be that free.
Well, on that note, allow me to be a free spirit from this podcast, because Dairy Queen closes in half an hour. And I got fucking milkshakes to get.